the only person who can decide whether or not their child can live in the world is the parents, right? At this scenario, I think that any parent will tell the mom, will tell the man to save their baby because they still have a long way to live, and they want their child to know later in life that their mother saved them and sacrificed their life for them. This is why it's very needed for us, the men, to save the only baby because it's morally right and it's the mother's wish for us to save the baby, right? I think that this is why it's very justified, and this is the morally righteous choice to save the baby. 2 points of setups then. Firstly, I think that the problem is that we cannot choose both to save both the mom and the baby, and the only morally righteous choice is to save one of them, which is the baby, because the parent will live in survivor guilt until the rest of their life, and this will not affect anything either, because they will always miss their baby and blame both the man and herself for surviving instead of saving the baby, right? The survival guilt and living in depression for the rest of their life is the wrong reason, is the reason as to why we have to save the baby, because it's the mother's wish for us to save it, right? But secondly, then I think that the burden of proof is clear, panels. If we are able to prove to you, one, why is it morally righteous choice, and secondly, it's within the mother's wish and consent, we win this debate, right? Moving to my first argument, then talking about why is this morally justified, I think that it's very clear, right? There are like 2 layers within this argument. Firstly, speaking as to why this is morally righteous choice. I think that a child gets to live in this world because they were born into it without being conscious and without no consent being born in this world, right? It's only right for us to save the child, to give them actually a chance to living the life where they can choose what to do, where they can choose what to learn, and where they can choose to develop a relationship within their friends and like communities, and having a partner and having a children themselves in the future, for example. This is the morally righteous choice, because it's the principle of not giving the choice for this baby to end their life is the immoral side in this debate, right? Because we want these children to actually have the opportunity to experience what their mother has lived through their life, which is why their mother also want the man to save the baby, right? This is justified for 2 reasons. A, baby don't get a chance to live, therefore we shouldn't take that away from them by not saving them, because there is no probability to what they will become if we don't save the baby, right? But secondly, the mom has already lived their life enough, because they have already born, because they have already lived, learned, fall in love, and have a child at the end of the day, right? So I think that the point of being fulfilled with the mom's life is actually already happening happening before the burning building act incident anyway. So I think that the mother has lived enough for their life, and they already feel fulfilled with what they achieve and what they earn in their life. Therefore, they want their baby to also have the same opportunity, right? Which is why this is within the mother's wish and the mother consent for us to actually save the baby, right? Let me picturize to you and give you the picturization as to what actually happened in the burning building incident, right? When you find the baby and the mom, you will see that the baby is crying in the mom's arms, for example. Because they want this baby to live, because it's okay. They will say things like, it's okay, you can leave me, and you just have to take my baby and save my baby, please save him, right? Because this is the mom's wish, because this is something that we don't want to take away from the mothers, right? Whether or not we want to save them or not, because I think that choice alone already explain why is this morally justified, because it's within the mother's wish and consent. Comparatively to opposition, then I think that it's very clear. Under your side of the house, when this mother actually wants you to save their baby, but you actually save them instead, this is where it's immoral under your side of the house, because you go against the mother's wish and the mother consent, right? This is why the mother will not feel fulfilled that they survive, but they will feel that they are wrong to survive, because they want their baby to survive instead. This is why on my second argument, I will talk about the survivor guilt that will happen for the mother, right? I think that you will lose either one of them in both sides, and you can argue how much it will affect either the mom or the baby. But here's the tangible impact, the tangible impact comparing both sides panels. Firstly, let's talk about the mom then. I think that you are not able to live the rest of your life because of the guilt and the grief, because they want their child to have a chance in living their life, right? You don't get to honor your baby for saving you, because it's not a saving, it's not a sacrificing, but either you leaving your baby alone in the burning building, right? The parents have to live with that guilt for the rest of her life, and this is something that will affect them in the way they life, for example, the way they are afraid to have a baby, for example, again, because the guilt that you are not able to save your last baby, right? But let's compare to what will happen if we actually save the baby. Then I think that what will happen with the baby is that you will get to live without your mom, but you still have other things to figure out. You will still have lots of things to live and to learn, and you don't actually remember what happened in the burning building anyway, because but you still love your mom for saving you, and you feel grateful. You get to honor your mother for saving you, right? This is the clear difference, panels, because under your side, the mom cannot honor their child for saving them, but under our side, the baby can actually honor their mom for saving them and for sacrificing her life for them, right? This is why the point of like the parent sacrificing and like the love that you have for your parent doesn't end just because your parents died. Doesn't end because your parents no longer live in this world, right? The love of your parents will still exist even if your parents died, because you know that they love you to the point that they will sacrifice their life for you. What will happen to the baby then? The baby will get to live a life where they can connect with other people who doesn't have a parent, or who doesn't have a mom, or like other father, and create a catharsis where they talk about what is the experience of living without parents, for example, building the kind of communities where under you save the house, if you don't save the baby, this will not happen, right? Because you will only save the mom, and the mom cannot create that kind of catharsis with other people, because they will believe that the grief is different, they will believe that mourning their baby is different, and they cannot honor their baby. But under our side, because the baby is not conscious yet in the burning building incident, so there is no idea of what actually the picturization of how their mom suffered in that burning building, right? Therefore, it's easier for the baby to accept that their mom sacrificed her life for them, and it's easier to build that kind of like loving community that they can find in the future if we save them. Under all those reasons, very proud to propose.
Let's be clear about what this debate is really about. First of all, even though this debate presents a specific scenario, we can still assume there are reasonable circumstances shaping that scenario. For instance, what kind of choices led us here? What kind of person the mother might have been? But secondly, I want to ask, what exactly the standard of moral righteousness? I think there are three things here. Firstly, moral righteousness is about choosing the lesser evil, being able to mitigate harm in situations where we cannot be sure that maximum utility is even possible. Second, we must recognize that there is a lot of ambiguity in this context. We don't actually know what happens after we save this individual, and that uncertainty matters when we think about what moral righteousness truly means. And thirdly, what is moral righteousness really? I think we must accept that it is not purely about utility, nor is it purely about moral obligation. Often, what we consider morally righteous is a mix of both, a balance between utility and moral obligation. In some cases, utility is more important, say when we want to maximize material well-being, like improving the economy. But in others, moral obligation takes precedence, like when a state creates policies to uplift the poor through affirmative action. So moral righteousness is shaped by universal values about fairness, compassion, and the reduction of harm. And those values affect how society perceives someone's decision to save one life over another. We have two main arguments from opening government side. Firstly, why the child's life is more valuable, and that's where we are going to engage on the utilitarian grounds. And secondly, why saving the child better fulfills our moral obligation. Going to the first argument, why the child's life is more valuable. We are thinking in utilitarian terms, i.e. to lessen evil or maximize utility. There are three reasons for this first argument. One, the child has far more potential. They have lived only a few months, maybe a year at most, compared to a 25-year-old mother who has already lived a significant portion of her life. We say that the longer someone has to live, the greater their potential to contribute good to the world. Adults at 25 have already built a certain path dependency. Their choices, education, life trajectory are relatively fixed. A child, by contrast, is a clean slate. They could become anyone. A doctor who cures cancer, a scientist who changes lives. whereas the mother's potential for future transformation is naturally narrower. 2. The child hasn't yet experienced any utility or happiness. A 25-year-old has likely experienced love, achievement, fulfillment, joy. The child hasn't. They haven't yet had the chance to discover meaning or happiness. So if our goal is to maximize utility, saving the one who has not yet experienced life allows for more total happiness to exist in this world. 3. Moral contribution and moral cleanliness. A baby is a moral blank slate. They haven't yet done any conscious good, but equally, they haven't done any conscious harm. A 25-year-old, by contrast, has inevitably made mistakes, maybe hurt others, maybe done wrongs, big or small. We're not saying that mother is terrible, but simply that through life experience, she has likely contributed some net harm, and the baby on average hasn't done none, ladies and gentlemen. So if people are of equal intrinsic worth, then we can judge their lives by potential for good and absence of harm. By that standard, the baby's moral record is cleaner, and that tips the balance between the mother and the child, ladies and gentlemen. So the question becomes, why prioritize the baby's life? There are two reasons here. Firstly, because the child hasn't yet experienced the happiness and meaning of life, whereas the mother already has. Second, because this aligns with our moral framework. We value maximizing happiness and minimizing harm. Saving the baby gives them a chance to experience life. It preserves a being who has not yet contributed harm to the world. That fulfills both utility and moral obligation. Before moving to the second argument, some preemptive. What about life without mother? They might say, in the side of opposition, that a child without mother will have a terrible life. Let's engage with that. 1. Foster care system today is already quite strong and quite progressive, ladies and gentlemen, especially in developed states. 2. This is likely a tragedy witnessed by a whole community, meaning that charities or support through networks will rally around the children to provide the support to them. 3. Extended family and community often step in, so there always help from them. 4. Current child development frameworks have been quite progressive. It emphasizes education, mental health, emotional support, so the child is going to be okay. 5. Many people have experienced loss, meaning we have more empathetic communities exist to support and to giving protection to the children when they are being raised in the future. 6. In aging societies where there are more elders, states are incentivized to support child raising. So definitely, government will offer benefits and guardianship mechanisms in order to make sure that children is going to be raised in a proper way. All of that means the child can still live a meaningful life and supported life. By contrast, the mother's life after losing her child could be far worse, filled with trauma, postpartum depression, guilt. So even from outcome perspective, saving the child likely produces less long-term suffering, ladies and gentlemen. Going to the second argument. While we have a stronger moral obligation to save the child, there are two analyses here. Firstly, the child is far more vulnerable. The mother had agency, choices she could make. The child has none. Our moral framework consistently values protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That's why we admire governments that help the poor, help the marginalized, help the voiceless, ladies and gentlemen. By saving the baby, we uphold and being consistent with our moral principle. Second, the mother likely would have wanted her child safe. Even beyond our moral reasoning, this aligns with her own moral duty as a parent to save their kids, ladies and gentlemen. Her final wish would likely be for her baby to live, not herself. By saving the child, we honor her deepest moral intent. So ultimately, fulfilling this duty, both our obligation to protect the vulnerable and her duty as a mother, makes our choice morally righteous, ladies and gentlemen. So moral righteousness is about balancing utility and obligation. By saving the child, we maximize the total utility and life potential, we uphold compassion and fairness, we protect the most vulnerable, and respect the mother's own moral instinct. So that's why, at the end of this debate, the choice that is both moral righteous and socially justifiable is to save the child. We beg to propose. Okay.